All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving into a story that honestly defies all logic. It's one of those narratives that's so completely wild, if you saw it in a movie, you'd probably roll your eyes and call it unbelievable. We're talking about a man who vanished without a single trace, leaving a baffled police force and a totally shattered family in his wake. Let's unpack the absolutely extraordinary case of John Darwin. I want you to picture something for a second. You walk out your front door right now, say goodbye to your family, just like any normal Tuesday, but then you just completely disappear. No phone calls to say you're okay, no letters, literally zero sightings. The police frantically search everywhere, but the leads just run entirely dry. And your family, after agonizing over your sudden absence, they eventually, heartbreakingly, lose all hope. 5 whole years pass. Just think about that span of time. Your family has entirely moved on with their lives. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, with zero explanation of where you've been, you just calmly walk back home. Just a simple knock on the front door. Right? It sounds absolutely impossible. But here's the thing. This astonishing return actually happened. This isn't some crazy fiction. It is documented history. So today, we're unraveling the true mystery of a former English teacher named John Darwin. How does a totally normal, everyday guy pull off a disappearing act of this magnitude? And honestly, what on earth brings him back? Let's reconstruct exactly how this whole thing played out. Okay, so the story kicks off back in 2002. John Darwin, who was living in England at the time, sets off for a completely routine canoe trip near the coast. Just a normal afternoon. But hours pass, the sun starts to set, and John simply never returns. And keep in mind, this wasn't some remote, dangerous wilderness. This was a familiar local coastline. But suddenly, without any warning, a local teacher was just gone, seemingly swallowed whole by the sea. Now, the physical evidence they found seemed to tell a pretty complete and devastating story. Search and rescue teams scoured those rough waters for days, and what did they find? Just the shattered pieces of his canoe floating in the ocean. No body was ever recovered, but with clear evidence of a wrecked boat, the conclusion felt painfully obvious to everyone involved. He was feared drowned. And after all hope was finally exhausted, John Darwin was officially declared dead. And normally that's exactly where a story like this ends. It seemed like a tragically closed case. Friends and family gathered to mourn, the legal system processed his death, and massive life insurance claims were paid out to his grieving widow. Driven by what looks like an unthinkable tragedy, his family began that incredibly difficult process of picking up the pieces, while his wife collected a substantial financial payout. But guys, here is where the narrative takes a complete hairpin turn. What nobody knew, not the police, not the insurance companies, not even the rescue divers, was that John Darwin was secretly very much alive. He hadn't drowned. He hadn't been swept out to sea by some rogue wave. No, he had methodically and secretly planned this entire disappearance right from the very beginning.
Just think about the stark contrast of this situation for a second. On one hand, you have the public story, a tragic accident, heartfelt memorials, a widow presumed to be all alone. But on the other side, the bizarre, secret reality. John was actually hiding in a tiny room inside the exact same house he once shared with his wife. So while people were literally weeping for him in public, he was sitting just on the other side of the wall, planning their next move. It is wild.
It was a double life built entirely on lies. And the craziest part is, they didn't just pull off the initial trick. They actively sustained it. The couple moved between different locations, successfully fooling their neighbors, the local authorities, and, devastatingly, even some of their own family members for years. They lived this completely hidden existence, all while comfortably relying on the lucrative life insurance payout from his faked death. When you map out the timeline of all this, you really grasp the true scope of the lie. From the initial disappearance back in 2002, going through years of secretly moving locations and hiding in plain sight, all the way up to 2007. They kept this elaborate charade going for 5 long years. But as we all know, every deception has a breaking point. And that brings us to the astonishing, fatal mistake they ultimately made. Because every complicated lie eventually creates a massive mistake, right? You just can't live as a ghost forever, especially when you have stolen money and big ambitions to spend it. John and his wife wanted to finally enjoy their newfound wealth out in the open and move abroad. And it was that exact desire that set the stage for a spectacular collapse. Their plan to get out of hiding was, honestly, incredibly brazen. John audaciously walks right into a London police station and claims he's suffering from this miraculous 5-year amnesia.
Seriously. The whole goal was to use this sudden return to secure a brand new, clean legal identity so he and his wife could finally move away. It was a staggering gamble to play right to the faces of the authorities.
Now, while a few people initially believed the whole miracle amnesia story, investigators were highly skeptical. And then, the smoking gun emerged. A single photograph surfaced online showing John and his wife happily smiling and posing together in Panama. And this photo, it was taken during the exact time he was supposedly dead. That one single image instantly shattered their entire carefully constructed facade. Overnight.
So this meticulous lie they spent 5 entire years maintaining, it completely unraveled in a matter of mere days. The ultimate price of their deception was coming due, and it brought swift, harsh justice and devastating personal consequences that honestly, neither of them had truly prepared for when they first locked the door to that small hiding room. The fallout was absolutely catastrophic. Both John and his wife were promptly arrested, convicted of massive insurance fraud, and sentenced to significant time in prison. All that stolen money had to be repaid, and their public reputations were totally destroyed. But beyond the legal and financial ruin, the most agonizing cost was the deep, permanent betrayal felt by their very own children, kids who had genuinely mourned the loss of their father. John Darwin wanted to live a life of secret luxury, but instead his mugshot and his story were broadcast globally. It really proves a powerful point. No matter how carefully a lie is planned, the truth has a very strange way of finding its way back. A meticulously plotted deception is ultimately no match for a single, undeniable piece of the truth. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Looking at the entirety of John Darwin's unbelievable saga, maybe the greatest mystery isn't the mechanics of how someone manages to fake their own death and disappear. The real mystery is why? What actually drives a person to completely erase their own existence and betray absolutely everyone they love? Thanks for walking through this fascinating story with me today. Keep questioning what you see because, as we've learned, not everything is as obvious as it seems.